know. Maybe you guys can you shut the door? If it gets hot, I'll open this door.
Which one? This one?
This one. Okay. Sorry, started recording a little bit late. We're talking about Jacob and Rebecca. Right. So yes. So for every little thing, you know, God is in control. So let's talk about this family, right? Let's talk about the two boys. I know you guys are and brothers and sisters. You guys are sisters and brothers, right? But you guys aren't exactly the same, right? You guys are different in many ways. So let's look at what are some of the differences between Jacob and Esau. Anything you can think of. You guys know the story. We're going to read the story a little bit more, but off of the top of your head, do you know what some of the differences are? They're twins, right? So you would think, oh, they're twins, they must be so much alike. Maybe not by looks, right? But they're different, right? They end up different. So any differences you know about Jacob and Esau?
Was Esau bigger, like stronger?
Ooh, good, right? He was a hunter, so he
Yeah.
must be maybe stronger, right? Good point. Anything else?
I think his like arm was more hairy or
He was
something.
hairier, right? He was more hairier, right?
Manly or something.
Manlier, maybe, right? Hey, does that mean that people who don't have hair are manly? Okay, what else? Anything else? What else do you think? One's a hunter, and what was Esau doing? I mean, Jacob doing? Do you guys remember? What was he doing? Interesting. Okay, so you guys are going to learn some stuff, right? So we could think that, okay, so Esau was probably adventurous, right? But it describes him in Genesis 25, 24 to 27. Let's read. Genesis 25, 24 to 27. Who has that?
Genesis what?
25, 24 to 27. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over. So they called out his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in his tent. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Okay. So any differences that you see in these verses? Any other differences that you see? He was hairy, he was manly, right? He was strong, right? What does it mean in verse 27? It says, so the boys grew. Esau was a skilled hunter, right? Man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man. Do you know what mild means? He was a mild man. It's like Superman, the mild manner reporter, right? But it's different. And you know that? If somebody says, oh, Jewel is a mild person, what? Right? You don't know? All right. So a mild, like somebody would think a mild is soft spoken and, you know, mild, shy, or something like that, right? But it's not actually in the Bible. This is something you'll learn. The Hebrew word that they use for Jacob, this is really interesting, is the same as Job and Noah. They said perfect in all their ways. Aha. So this gives you a little bit of an insight into Jacob, right? He was mild in the sense that he had a good moral character, right? He was godly, right? He had that relationship with God, and you'll see that later on, right? So that may have been a difference between Jacob and Esau. Esau was more like, I'm going to go hunt, I'm going to go kill, right? But what I heard in some of the sermons, and Joy, you could correct me, is that he was more of an organizer, right? He wanted to make sure that things were proper. He took care of things, right? He did maybe the finances or took care of the families and, did all of those things that was responsible. Then you got Jacob, who just like, oh, just give me food, I'm gonna die. Just give me, right? So you see that kind of differences within both their characters as well, too, right? So we're gonna learn about this family that's kind of dysfunctional, right? You guys know what it means, dysfunctional family? Have you heard that before? A dysfunctional family. What do you think? What does that mean? If somebody came up to you and said, somebody told me about dysfunctional, they're in a dysfunctional family, what do you think that means? Split the word into two. What's the first?
Dis.
And then second?
Functional.
Okay.
It's the opposite of function.
Excellent. Dysfunctional, right? It's not a good functioning family. It's dysfunctional. I think most of the families in this world are dysfunctional, right? I came from a dysfunctional family, even though my father was a pastor. They went through divorce and everything else. Right? We were all dysfunctional, right? This whole world is dysfunctional, right? And then, but there's a lot worse than what I went through. But here is the beginning of this Israel nation, right? And they were so dysfunctional, this whole family, right? So we're going to read some of, and then while we read, think about how is this family dysfunctional. So we're going to keep reading Genesis 25. Who has 28 to 34? 20 to 34. If you guys want, you guys can grab Bibles at the top up there as well too.
Yeah.
Okay, Genesis 25, 28 to 34. You got it? Nathalie?
28 to 34, right?
Yeah.
And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Okay, stop right there.
Favoritism.
There you go. Favoritism, right?
Mm,
Why is favoritism not a good thing?
I can sense that in my family.
It was what?
I can sense that in my family.
Okay. Who is loved the most between all three of you?
My dad, I don't know, because he has kind of like a poker face. And my mom, I feel like she has like favoritism over Shinji, who's not here.
Interesting. But they love you all, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think every family has a favorite son or daughter. My mom, she loved my brother. She would tell me, like, she so I know that, but I was daddy's girl. I knew, my dad loved me, right? So there is favoritism, but that's dysfunctional. What happens when there's favoritism in the family?
Jealousy.
Oh, jealousy, right? So what do you think is happening you could start seeing what's happening with Jacob and Esau, right? Okay, so keep going, 29 to 34.
Now Jacob cooked the stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright as of this day. And Esau said, look, I am about to die, so what is this birthright to me? Then Jacob said, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, arose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
Okay, so anything else you see that's kind of dysfunctional here?
What chapter is it?
This is 25, Genesis 25, 28 to 34. Anything else that you can see here that was kind of dysfunctional with the family, with the brothers? Let's see. So let me think. this was interesting because I didn't know this before. But one of the sermons I heard was that Jacob would have probably known about the prophecy. He was mother's boy, right? And his mother, the Lord spoke to his mother directly. He said, well, the older is going to serve the younger, right? So Jacob knew, right, that he's supposed to get the birthright. He's supposed to get, the number one thing, right? So he must have been thinking about that for a while, because why would he just go out and say, I want the birthright right now, right? So even if he knew all that, remember the stories about Abraham that we studied? We studied about Abraham, how he did his things. He didn't trust God, and he said, okay, well, Sarah, you just pretend that you're my sister. Like, instead of trusting God, he put his things into his own hands. So it's like over here, it's like, if he knew about what the prophecy was, instead of allowing God to work through things, he kind of just did his own thing as well too, right? So this is something that I heard. I think Joy has something, right? So that was one thing that I learned. So in his own way, he was trying to help God in the prophecy, maybe. So that's one of the things I heard. Anything else, Joy, that you have?
Are we still on the subject of Jacob's character?
Dysfunctional brothers. When you went to get this, that's okay. That's okay. I wasn't sure if you had something. Okay, so birthright. What is a birthright? This was interesting. I learned something new on this too. So it's not like something that you can pick up really easy. So a birthright, usually somebody older gets it, right? That's one thing that we know. Apparently it had to do with some wealth, some money, right? There was some spiritual significance, meaning that they would be kind of like the leader of the family kind of thing, spiritual leader, right? The birthright. And then he knew about the promises that was coming down his line, like they were going to be a great nation and the Messiah is going to come through the line, right? So there's a lot of responsibilities with that, right? But Esau, he's just like, here, take it. I'm going to die, right? If you had that opportunity to have all of that, right? And he says, here, just take it, I'm starving. What do you think about Esau? He's a little crazy.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
No, you would think like, I want that birthright, right? Because I have the right. I'm the oldest one to have that right, right? But it kind of shows you a little bit about Esau, about how he had his eyes on the worldly things, about hunting, that's all he cared about, and eating, about temporal things, about things that would satisfy him, right? And not about the future. Like, he wasn't even thinking about the future or anything. He's just like, right now, I'm hungry, I want it. So that should be a lesson to us as well too. Like, when we want something, don't go with your feelings, right? You have to think. You got to think about your consequences. Think about your actions, because they will have consequences, maybe not now, but in the future as well too, right? So these are really good lessons that you guys got to take with these, right? So here's another thing. In Hebrews, Paul talks about this. Turn to Hebrews. Who has Hebrews chapter 12, Hebrews 12.
Maybe just in addition to that, when the birthright from Esau, when Jacob presented Esau with the deal that, okay, give me your birthright when I give you this pot of stew, if Esau truly valued that birthright, he wouldn't give it up. But because his heart, his mind, and his whole being does not care about the birthright, it's so easy to just give it up. And so I think with us, like, if we truly care and we truly value our relationship with God, it should be in our everyday life, where we value those things that are from God versus the things that are from the earthly standard. And so we can see that in the character of Esau, that yes, a birthright comes with the riches of the earthly riches, but Jacob in the spirit of prophecy is characterized as someone who valued the spiritual aspect of it, or the spiritual value of it, more than the earthly value, which is the riches. And so, but then speaking of Jacob, even though he valued the spiritual aspect of it, he wasn't spiritual in a way, in the way that he dealt with that situation, because even though he prized God and he has a very good character, he's described as a gentle and thoughtful and kind character. Although he had all of these, he still had to grow in faith and in his spiritual context. So even though he prized the spiritual aspect of the birthright, that's why he desired it from Esau. He wasn't free from temptation. He wasn't free from sin. So he had to grow out of that as well. Like Abraham had to go through a process, Jacob also had to go through a process. But going back to Esau, the reason why it was so easy to give up his birthright over a pot was because he didn't value it at all.
Mm,
He just, like you said, he only valued his fun, like hunting.
exactly. Thank you for adding to that. Exactly, right? So big lesson for us as well too, for sure, right? Somebody get Hebrews chapter 12. Who has that? Okay, sure. 12, 14 to 17.
Pursue peace with all people, and holiness without which no one will see the Lord. Looking carefully, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause problem, and by this many become defiled, lest there be any fornicator or profane person like Esau, who were one morsel of food toward his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears.
Okay, I know that's hard. I know it's hard to understand that, right? That's okay. So let's break this down. It says, pursue peace with all people, meaning, don't try to fight with people. Try to always make peace, right? Blessed are the peacemakers. Isn't that what Jesus said, right? Without which no one will see God, right? If you look for a fight, if you try to go for a fight, right? It says right here, no one will see the Lord. Always look for a peaceful solution. So yeah, when you guys fight, don't try to instigate a fight. Look for a peaceful resolution, right? That's a good one here, right? And it says looking carefully, or you're going to fall short of the grace of God, right? And the blah, 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 keep going. And then it says, or you're going to be like a fornicator or profane person like Esau. You know what profanity. So for one morsel of food sold his birthright. Basically, it's saying that godlessness, right? It's the opposite of godly, right? Profane, right? So it's describing Esau as somebody that was profane, fornicating, right? And for him, basically he just went with what he felt like. He wanted to do, we call it a carnal self. I don't think you guys know what that means, but it's human nature for us to sin, right? So he just went with what he felt like, what felt good at the time, and he didn't have any self-control. He just did what he wanted to, right? That's what that meant. So he's saying that don't fall for that. Be mindful when you feel angry. If you feel okay, well, it's not going to hurt just taking another piece of cake. I'm just throwing it out there, right? It's not going to hurt. Well, you know that you're diabetic, and then in the future, it's not going to be good for you, just hypothetically, right? So you take that cake because you don't care, right? So be careful of that. You got to think about the consequences of your actions. If you get angry with somebody, is that gonna make it better? If you're having a fight with somebody, right, and you get angry, does that make it better? No. Do you know what happened to Jeff one time? He's not here, so I can share it. I actually called him, he won't watch it. He was driving, right? And the car came and cut him off. He was so angry. He was so angry. I'm trying to calm him down, right? He drove by, he went by the car, right? He turned around, and guess what the guy did? He smiled and he just went like this, and he go, and the joke, how can I be angry at that? If that guy ended up to be angry back at Jeff, what do you think what would have happened?
Road rage.
Road rage, right? So, be mindful of what you're doing. And then just because you feel angry, count to 10, talk to the Lord and say, Lord, help me. Remember, Peter said, Lord, save me, right? So when you get angry, just say, Lord, save me, right? And then count to 10, and then, the Lord will calm you down. And just think about, if I get angry, is this going to help the situation? No. So you have to practice on dealing with your emotions. And it's really difficult for a lot of people. It's hard for Jeff because, he was on, because he was on, drugs for a lot of years, right? So when he stopped drugs, he started to grow, which was in his 30s, right? So, it's difficult for him to deal with a lot of things that you guys are going through at a younger age, right? So, but it's such an important lesson to make sure that you guys learn how to deal with your emotions, right? Okay, we're going on to Jacob's ladder. Jacob's ladder was an interesting story. This story talks about when God makes a promise, right? Do we take it into our own hands, or do we trust God? So I know this is a long one. Do we have time to read it? You guys know about the story about the Jacob's ladder? You guys are good with it? You guys understand what happened? Does anybody want to give a summary of what happened instead of reading all these verses? 9 to 1 to 17. Who could summarize it? You forget?
Yeah.
All right, we can read this.
No.
You could do it?
I'm gonna oversimplify it.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah.
Jacob sleeps on a rock. He sees ladder.
Okay.
That's as much as you guys know.
Wait, was it the same part as when he had a fight with an angel, or was
No,
that
this is a different part. That was when he was coming back.
Oh yeah, so that when he saw the ladder, it was when he was going to
Yes.
the place, and when he came there.
Was that when you ran away from Esau?
Yes,
Oh,
exactly. So what happened? So we know that he took his birthright. Did I go through that already? Okay, we're gonna get back to that one. So he runs away, right? I don't know why they put it in that order. So I just sit down and then go back to it. I'll just make sure. I don't know. I'll just make sure that I'm not missing something. No, I'm not missing anything. Okay, weird. Okay, so when he was running away, he says, oh no, this is the story. Okay, we're gonna do this. You guys open your Bibles, Genesis 27. Genesis 27, we're gonna do a skit. We're
Yeah.
gonna do a skit.
Genesis
Okay.
27.
27, right? Who is going to be, I'll be the narrator, right? Who's going to be Isaac, the father? Who wants to be Isaac, the father? Okay, you're Isaac. Jacob, who's going to be Jacob? You're Jacob.
Esau.
Esau.
You-
Jacob and Esau. Who's
No,
gonna be mom?
No, I'm younger.
Who's gonna be mom?
But
You guys
you're
are gonna be-
more living in the present.
Who's gonna be Rebecca, the mother?
Rebecca. What did you do?
You're, okay, I need.
There was a lot.
All right, so I'm gonna, wherever you guys see your lines, you guys figure it out, you guys read it. and then pretended to skip, and you guys are gonna read it, right? Okay, so I'm gonna narrate, and so I'm gonna say, now it came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he couldn't see, that he called Esau, his older son, and said to him,
My son,
and he answered him.
Here I am.
Then he said,
behold now, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore, please take your weapons and quiver your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and make me savory food, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die.
now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau, his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt game to bring it. So Rebekah spoke to Jacob, her son, saying,
Indeed, I heard your father speak to Esau, your brother, saying, bring me game and make savory food for me, that I may eat and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go now to the flock and bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your father, such as he loves. Then you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before his death.
and Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother,
Look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing.
but his mother said to him,
Let your course be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them for me.
and he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her elder son Esau, which was with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats on her hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the savory food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hands of her son Jacob. Good job, you guys. Excellent job. You guys can picture what's happening, right? Because of what you're reading, right? So, what are your thoughts about this plan?
Kind of messed up.
It's messed up, eh? Pretty messed up, right? Why do you think it's messed up? Like, what parts of it are messed up? Like, what's happening here with this dysfunctional family?
Isaac thought he was blessing Esau, but then Rebecca made Jacob feel like Jacob had the features of Esau, so
Yeah,
that he could bless him
It's
instead.
like
Yeah,
lying
right.
to your own family.
it's like lying to your own family, right? Which is an important part. Remember that, right? Like lying to your important family, right? And when she did that, like what Jules said, it's like Rebecca made him. Why would you say she made him?
Was it in like hands of the Lord? Like, did he want Jacob to be blessed?
So possibly, but I think there was something in the verses that said, he said something. Okay, Jacob, what did you say to your mother when she said, this is a plan?
Look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing.
Okay, so did he seem like he wanted to do it?
No.
No, right? So you're right, right? It's just like, well, I don't want to get in trouble from dad, right? Which is interesting because Rebecca and him kind of knew what was happening with prophecy, right? And he's more worried about what his father thinks than what God might think in that situation, right? Which is kind of interesting. So yes, he wasn't trusting God as well too through all this. Let's keep going.
I know this wasn't brought out fully, but chapter 26 of Genesis, we also read that there was a famine in the land, and Isaac took his wife to the Philistine area to live. And he did the exact same thing as Abraham did when he said that Rebecca is my sister. And then, so he was living a deception while he was in the Philistine land, and eventually they found out. But my point there is, we see how Abraham made or did this trickster, or like deception in the time in Egypt, and then Abraham actually went to the Philistine land and did the same thing. And then we see this in Isaac. He did this in chapter 26, and then we see this also in Rebecca.
Yeah.
And now she's teaching Jacob. So it's like this trait is not, it's not by chance, it's been practiced in this family.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. So it's a trend with the family of deceiving, right? So like Joyce said, from Abraham all the way through, it keeps deception, right? But remember what we learned last week and the week before about Abraham and about what happened. So God was molding him, molding his character. He's allowing these things to happen to, oh yeah, you guys weren't here last week. You guys are, so God is allowing these things to happen to, like he's the, what's called father of all nations, right? So he had a big responsibility, right? Everybody looked at him, right? So God was molding him, allowing him to learn, because overnight he didn't become the father of, they call him the father of all faith, right? Like they talk in Hebrews about how faithful he was going to kill Isaac and everything else, right? He didn't just get there, right? All of a sudden he says, okay, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to kill my son. It was a progression, right? It was a part of his journey. So the same part of the journey that Abraham had to do, God's allowing the same thing for Jacob as well too, going through his journey and learning from the mistakes that he did as well too, right? So thank you, Joy, for bringing that up. Another thing was, it's interesting that both parents had their favorites, right? So Isaac loved Esau, right? And Rebecca loved Jacob. And they both had their own plans. Like they weren't looking at God's plan, right? So Jacob, even though Isaac probably already knew about the prophecy, like Rebecca must have told him, but still he was going to give the birthright to the oldest, right? But also Rebecca had her own plan, say, I'm going to deceive and I'm going to make sure it's okay, put the curse on me, right? But I'm gonna make sure that this is going to happen instead of trusting God. So both parents, we're still talking about dysfunctional. These are the patriarchs of the nation, right? And you see how dysfunctional they are and not trusting in God, right? But the beauty of it is God sees past that. He allows this to happen. This shows God's mercy and his love, right? And he understands and he allows these things to happen so they learn. So even if we're in a dysfunctional family, right? You guys aren't as much as I was, right? But being in a dysfunctional family, God will take that and he'll use it to help us learn and to help us grow, which is an amazing lesson, right? Okay, so he flees. So he listens to his mother and he flees. And this is where we get to the Jacob's ladder. Okay, so Jacob's ladder. There was a significance of Jacob's ladder. And I wanted to ask you guys what you guys think of Jacob's ladder. So Jacob's ladder is here food. Where is it? Father, finish blessing. Okay, so Esau got mad. Where is it?
Genesis 28:12, and he dreamed.
Yeah, 20, thank you, 10 to 15. But we could start from 12. Hey, Joy, why don't you read that? You have it open, right?
28.
So start from verse 10 to 15. So 28,
Jacob
10 to 15.
And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows, and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of the Lord ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou lie, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and I will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land, for I will not leave you until I have done that which I have spoken to thee.
Okay, so this is so cool. Could you imagine? What do you think Jacob was feeling like before all this? He may have felt guilty for doing what he did. His brother wants to kill him. His mother that loves him is separated. She said, go away. So he's alone. There's no family with him, right? Goes and runs away, right? And then he has a rock for a pillow. What do you think about that? Right? A little hard, right? And then you see this vision and God talks to you. And what does he say? What's a summary of what God said to him?
We're like saying he'll never leave him and he's with him always.
Always, right? And he still has that promise. I'm going to make you a father of all, all the sands of the people, sands of the sea, right? That means God always keeps his promise, no matter what. Even though we screw up, even though we make a mess of things, even though we come from a weird family, God will still, if God has a plan, he's going to make sure that the plan's going to work. So it'll be interesting to see when we go to heaven and say, okay. If Jacob didn't do that, how would you have gone ahead with the blessings, right? If they were supposed to trust you, it would be so interesting to ask. There's so many questions I want to ask, right? So that might be one of them. But yeah, so for him, God will always, if he promises something, he will never break his promise. We talked about the covenant last week. That's the difference between our promises and God's promises. We tend to break our promises, but God will never break his promise, right? And so this just shows you as well too that even though we make mistakes, we do something stupid, we do whatever it is, right? God will always, as long as you repent and go to him and trust in him and keep building a relationship with him, right? God is going to work in you and he's going to do amazing things through you, right? So that's what that lesson's about. Okay, let me keep going. I know I'm running out of time. Okay, death of Sarah. So Jacob leaves and he goes to the mother's side of the family. Do you know who his uncle was? Rebecca's uncle, or his uncle, Rebecca's brother. You don't know? No. Laban.
Oh,
Remember Laban? Because Jacob's son, I'm sorry, somebody else goes to, oh no, wait. So Sarah came from Laban's family, I believe, right? I think.
So Laban is Rebecca's sister when the
So with Sarah's in the family of Laban too, right? When the servant went to go get a wife for Abraham. That was
right.
as well too, right?
Right. So Rebecca was at the well.
Yeah.
And Laban is Rebecca is Laban's sister.
Yes, but with Sarah. You remember
Sarah?
the relationship between Sarah? Was it Sarah as well too? Went to Laban, they came from the same place. That's why he sent, okay, we're gonna have to look into that one, because I thought I heard one of the servants say that when the servant went to go find a wife for Abraham, they went to Laban as well too. We're gonna have to take a look. Okay, we'll get back to you guys on that. But yes, so Laban is the mother's brother. So she sent him over to Laban, right, to escape. So that was his uncle Laban, right? And so what happened there? Genesis 29, who has verse 20 to 25, Genesis 29, 20 to 25. Oh, this one's quick. Go ahead.
20 to 25?
Yeah.
20. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her." And Laban gathered together in all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. And Laban gave his name Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served for you? Why then have you deceived me?"
Okay, so what was Jacob experiencing at that point? What was he experiencing at that point? That's something that Chloe said earlier. Remember? So what's happening is Rachel, he wants Rachel as his wife, which is work 7 years for her. So he works 7 years, right? And then they have this marriage where it's late at night or whatever, he can't see anything, I don't know what's happening, but anyway, so, right? Next morning he finds out, oh my goodness, it's not Rachel, the one I love, it's her older sister, what in the world, right? What is he experiencing at this point? Taste their own medicine. Right? He is experiencing deception by family, what Chloe was saying, right? Deception by your own family. So it's like God's trying to show him, to make him understand, to say, maybe, he didn't feel that guilty of what he did, because he may have thought, I'm supposed to be getting the birthright, so I did what it's supposed to. Maybe he didn't feel, as much, but God wanted to make sure that he understood what that felt like to be deceived by his own family, right? He allowed that to happen, right? And you know what? It's a lesson for us as well too. Be careful what you guys do. Remember about the consequences, because God wants to teach you guys. So whatever you guys do, right? Be careful that it doesn't come back to you guys as well too, right? And you guys know how that feels like, right? So yeah, so God sometimes has to take us to difficult situations to teach us and show us what we've done and what it feels to others, right? So Jacob gets this huge revelation of, oh my goodness, what have I done? Maybe it doesn't say that in the Bible, but you could assume that that's what happens, right? And it's interesting that, did you know the lineage of Jesus actually comes through Leah, the first wife. So that's interesting as well too. Rachel was more loved, right? He said that he just loved her, right? So Leah probably didn't feel as loved, right? Favoritism again, right? But so that happened. So
Even the lineage of the priest food in, I mean, like not the spiritual, but Israel's priesthood is from the tribe of Levi.
Ah,
So yeah, so Levi and then Judah, which was the line of Jesus Christ. So that was really interesting. It's like God has respect to Leah.
yes, exactly, right? So, God knows what was right. Right? He knew, he still had a plan for Leah, right? As well as Rachel as well too. And so we continue with this dysfunction, right? So now what's happening with these two wives? Now there's two wives now. What's happening? More dysfunction, right? We still got favoritism, right? He loves Rachel more, right? Do you know what that caused? What did this cause? This favoritism. What do you think? If you know the story. So there's a competition. Who's gonna have the most babies? Right? There's a competition now to say, so Leah is not as well, so she's gonna say, okay, well, I could have children. And remember, Rebecca can't have children, right? So she's going, I'm gonna have as many children as I could get, right? So she starts having kids. Then, Rebecca will go, hey, that's not fair. Take my maid, right? Go make children with my maid, right? So she gets children for her maid. And then Leah sees, okay, so I'm gonna use my maid then. Okay, go get my maid, Poor Jacob. Anyways, we won't get into that one, right? So there's this competition that's happening with the two wives as well too. Two wives does not work. God does not want people to marry more than one person, right? Back then, sometimes people say, well, wasn't that like accepted back then? But no, God never condoned it. He warned against it, right? He didn't want that. That's why he put it in the commandments, right? So people will twist things around and stuff like that, right? But you cannot serve two masters. If you have two wives, you got two women to talk to, it's not a pretty sight, right? So, one thing I wanted to go back on. Sorry, should I finish this first? Okay, so there's this controversy within the family, but God could still repair and make things beautiful, right? So he could still take what's happening here and he could still bless, right? And because he still has his mission, right? He still has his will. He still has what he wants, so he's going to still make it, keep his promise to, no matter what, even though all this stuff's happening, right? I wanted to go back. Everybody asks this question, and I bet you guys asked it. I will bet you guys ask this all the time when we go through the story. How in the world, I'm going back to the last thing that we were talking about when the big deception. How in the world did Isaac think that sheep's fur on the arms and the neck is supposed to fool him? Have you thought of that? Have you tried to picture that? So here's his mom. He comes with sheep's fur and puts this thing on his arm. How do you think the fur is gonna feel like? Like, do you think, was he that hairy? Like, was Esau that hairy? Like that he has like fur on his arms and neck? Like, what do you think? Because I heard, because everybody asked that one, and then I just heard in one of the sermons this morning. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So what do you guys think? This is really interesting. What do you guys think? Have you ever seen the sheepskin? Right? It's like you hold and it's like squishy, right? It's not like real fur, right? So, okay, so this is what I heard. This is really cool. So if anybody asks you, this is what I heard, and it's just an assumption. But they said that Isaac was he couldn't see well, right? You know that, right? He was really old in age. And then so this pastor said when certain people, not all, but when certain people get really old, they start losing their cognitive abilities, like their sense of touch, or they're not sure about things, right? Like, when you get older, you become a little bit confused and things like that. So you can saying possibly, and that makes total sense, you could have just been a little bit confused or whatever and said, okay, yeah, I feel, and I could smell him. So I thought that was kind of cool that I shared with you guys. Okay, so let's keep going. So what happens was that Jacob works for Laban. Do you know how many years Jacob worked for him? For his wives?
7 years.
7 years for Rachel and
7 years for the
Leah, 14 years. And he actually stayed longer.
for the
No, he stayed another 6 years. He stayed with him for 20 years working for his uncle. I think that was pretty payback for what he did back then, right? So he works for 20 years, and then God directs him to go home, right? And then so he again says, don't worry, I'm going to be with you, I'll never forsake you, I will be with you. So all this being hand in hand as well too, right? So what's interesting was that where is it? Hang on. God actually blessed him. Let's read. Where is it? Oh, I can't find it. Anyway, so when the Jacob's ladder was there, right? That was basically like the blessing of the firstborn. He got it anyways, right? God already gave him his blessings, his birthright or whatever, right? Saying that he's going to be a father of all nations and everything. So whatever happens, what God planned will still go through. So even if that deception didn't happen, God still blessed him on the way out. So this part of that story of the deception didn't even need to happen, which is interesting. That part, they did it on their own. That whole mess, they did it on their own. That didn't even have to happen because God would have blessed them anyways. So again, that just shows you that sometimes we take things into our own hands, right? Can you think of a time where you guys have thought of doing something on your own, then you realize that God's going to take care of it later after the fact? Has that happened to you? Can you think of anything? I could think of. Okay, so what happened to me at work? I think I told you guys this before, right? My boss says, okay, you've got to speak to, remember that one? You got to
need to
speak.
speak to like the bosses.
Yes.
Yeah, like you didn't like prepare for it at all.
I only had 10 minutes. I only had 10 minutes to talk to them and I wasn't prepared, right?
I know this. They were talking to you like that. They forgot about you.
Exactly, right? So I'm just like, I was sweating. I'm just, okay, I started looking at all my reports. I started to put everything together. I said, okay. And I'm looking at my watch going, I'm gonna look like an idiot, right? So I'm trying to do this, right? At the same time, I'm praying to Lord, I can't do this. I can't do this. I said, I'm nervous. I never had to speak to these people before, right? They're the big bosses, right? And I'm like, I don't, I said, I'm gonna put everything into your hands because I tried so hard and I knew I couldn't do it and I had no other choice, right? I said, God, I'm gonna put it into your hands because I know I can't do this, right? And if they fire me, then they fire me, that's fine. You're in control, right? They said that. And then next thing you know, the meeting starts, I'm sweating, they're going through all the financials, they're going through everything. They go, okay, well, we're out of time. Thank you very much. I'm like, thank you, Lord. Lord, thank you, right? I'm like, I would think that, it's supposed to happen certain ways, but our ways isn't the same as his ways. You gotta trust in him. Any situation, like if you think, okay, how's God gonna get me through this? Don't even say that, right? Don't even ask that because it's gonna be completely different than what you guys think. It's gonna be so different. And when you see it, you're gonna go, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding, right? I was jumping up and down. Thank goodness I was at home, right? And After the meeting, I was just on my knees praising him, saying, oh, Lord, thank you so much, right? There's so many situations where you need to put everything into his hands, no matter what happens, right? So are there any other times that you could think of in there? Have you guys had any hard times that you try to do things on your own? Yeah. How did that turn out? Sometimes good, right? Sometimes not so good. Right? Sometimes you won't know the results until later on of what happens as well too. Right? So if you put your trust in him, you're not going to go wrong. It may seem like the wrong thing to do, right? It may seem really weird. Like I was talking, another thing that just happened to me was I was just talking to a client of mine, like she's a project manager, and she's Muslim. And she started talking about her God and everything, which is great. They open up communication a little bit, right? And I kept saying, because you know how upset they get of it sometimes if you mention another religion, she knows I'm Christian and stuff, right? And then so I prayed and prayed, and I said, oh, maybe I'm not going to mention it because it kind of caused some tension because she's my client, right? And people don't want to talk about religion and getting stuff like that. Right? But I said, okay, God, it's okay. I don't care. I said, you know, she gets upset, then she gets upset because my ways aren't your ways. I might think that way, but I know that's what you want me to do, right? And so I started talking to her about the prophecies and everything else, right? And she wants a copy of my sermon. That's what turned out. I'm just like, what? I'm like, sure. Right? And then I started talking about Jesus, and she was just, so don't go with what you think is right. Go with what God tells you in your heart to do right. Okay, that's right. Dear sweet loving Father in heaven, thank you so much for this amazing lesson. Help us to trust you more. Your way is the best way. You know us more. You know us more than anyone else and everyone around us. Help us to see you in everything and help us to praise you in everything and help us to trust you in everything. Thank you, Lord, for the youth. I pray for them every day, Lord, and continue to work in them in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Joy, for joining. And we will see you guys on the flip side. Stop your board.
Hi, guys.
Okay.